2022 was the year of God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West and Elden Ring, among a suite of top tier games that have made their way to PlayStation. It's all people were talking about in 2022, including us, but amidst the insanely anticipated and the ridiculously well reviewed, 2022 was also filled with games that got sort of swept under the rug, whether that be critically or culturally, and I'm here to give them their moment in the sun. Hello everyone, it's Aidan from Push Square, and while you can certainly check out our top 10 games of 2022, which will release in video form later this week, this particular video is all about the games that were somewhat underrated over the last 12 months. Now of course, I'd love to see which ones you think should have been on this list as well down in the comments, but for now, let's see what games I think deserved better in 2022. Okay, let's get one thing straight, Evil West is not a particularly great game, but, and this is a big but, people, not all games need to be your emotionally gut-punching 10 out of 10s. While Evil West in my books sits firmly around the 6 to 7 rating range, I have been having a fun time playing a game that is just your typical PS3 styled co-op shooter, but with better graphics. Evil West is riddled with awkward cutscenes and a story that will have you raising your eyebrows at the mishmash of cowboys and vampires, but none of that really matters when it just feels great to beat said vampires to a mushy pulp with guns, melee combat and electrifying abilities. Now I have no idea what is going on in its story, but just chatting away with friends over its crunchy combat has me feeling like it's 2007 all over again. The release of Gotham Knights was severely marred by the news that the game would only be running at 30 FPS on PS5, which, as a current gen only release, was understandably disappointing. But if you got yourself past the lack of 60 FPS, Gotham Knights is actually a fantastic time. Now it's a different beast from the Arkham series, that is true, but with, in my opinion, one of the best renditions of Gotham City and a solid and seamless co-op experience, I think a lot of the criticisms towards this game were a little harsh. I mean, the game had a solid and entertaining campaign, the combat, while a little bullet or punch spongy? That doesn't sound right, but you get what I mean. In the aforementioned co-op, I had quite a few late night sessions on Gotham Knights with a friend. Now it won't challenge you too much, but it is clear that a lot of love and passion for the DC universe went into this game. After waiting for what felt like decades, Overwatch 2 finally launched on PlayStation, immediately gaining the Overwatch 1.5 subtitle as it felt like an iteration rather than an evolution of the popular PvP shooter. But Overwatch 2 is much more than that in my opinion. Now I was never a huge fan of the original game, but with Overwatch 2, I just clicked with it so much more. The new push mode is a fantastic addition, the controls feel brilliant, it looks really nice, and it all just felt a lot slicker over its 2016 predecessor. Understandably, to wait for so long for an iteration can be disappointing, but Blizzard were in a difficult position as it really couldn't stray too far from the nest. So what we got was a balancing act of trying to bring the game forward whilst keeping that foundation that everyone loves so much intact. And once you cut through all the noise surrounding its release, Overwatch 2 is just a really fun shooter, especially if you can fill up your squad. Another one that we were waiting on for quite some time, Dying Light 2 Stay Human made the small mistake of launching just weeks before 2022 behemoths Horizon Forbidden West and Elden Ring. In the flurry of excitement over the fact that both of those games were even better than the fans had hoped for, Dying Light 2, a fun open world zombie adventure, was just sort of forgotten. But it really shouldn't be if you're a fan of manageable open world experiences. Now I was a massive fan of the first game, and Dying Light 2 improves upon it in almost every way. The conclusion to the story, yeah, it does feel a little unfinished, I will admit, but when you look at the stunning graphics, the massively increased verticality and a great new setting, and hugely expanded upon first person parkour, There's so much fun to be had here. It's also playable in online co-op, and we've not too long ago received the first expansion in Techland's 5-year post-launch support commitment. So if you want to rinse its campaign or stick with it for years of content to come, then you have that choice. Switching out zombies for deadites, next up I've got Evil Dead the game. Now this is your Dead by Daylight blueprint with a stunning recreation of the Evil Dead universe. With various characters and locations showing up from the cult series, it doesn't really reinvent the wheel, but it does, by far, feel like one of the most polished attempts at the survivor versus killer genre. If you're a fan of the series, you'll revel in seeing characters like Ash Williams tearing through deadites with his chainsaw hand, or even just being spooked by a possessed car. If you're not a big fan of the movies or TV shows, that doesn't matter too much either, because Evil Dead adds in enough flavouring of action and visual style that you'll just be glad to be enjoying the genre in a way that doesn't look like the graphics are made of literal cardboard. Oh, and the teamwork is really essential here, so as expected, you have a solid co-op experience on top of all that. Having been a fan of the recent incarnation of the Doom games, it's easy to see how something like Metal Hellsinger could come into existence. Tapping into that bond between the high-octane, gory gameplay and blood-pumping, adrenaline-boosting soundtracks, Metal Hellsinger takes those aspects and makes them an integral part of your gameplay experience to create a rhythm-based FPS game. And frankly, it's genius. Now admittedly, the level and enemy design could be a little bit more varied in some areas, but it never really overthrows the fun that you have when you start to feel at one with the weapons and the music. With the music getting more intense and the gameplay more destructive, the better in sync you are. This is a game that's hard to really bring across how fun it can be unless you are there with the controller in hand and just rocking out to a suite of great tracks and guest vocalists. Need for Speed Unbound just kind of came out a few weeks before I'm recording this, and honestly, I don't think enough people even really know about it. With the game landing on the same release date as the Callisto Protocol and Midnight Suns, and just being a few weeks apart from the likes of God of War Ragnarok and The Witcher 3 Next Gen, and the fact that it really didn't have much of an advertising campaign, it's really no wonder that Need for Speed Unbound didn't make more of a splash. It is such a shame as well though, because it's a really great arcade racer. We actually gave the game an 8 because it manages to embed an addictive risk-reward system into its gameplay structure, whilst having the most personality that a Need for Speed game has had in years thanks to its animated driving effects. The driving feels great, it looks great, customization is great, yet Need for Speed Unbound passed by without so much as a quiet little rev. But I am here with my foot fully down on the pedal. The Ollie Ollie series for years has been home to the perfect chill out gaming sessions, with easygoing tunes, bright and colourful backdrops, and of course, fun yet simple skateboarding gameplay. Ollie Ollie World really amplifies all of the series' best assets to make a better looking, better controlled, and overall just a better game. But another one to launch in the dreaded February of 2022 meant that it became another victim to the shadow of Elden Ring. In Ollie Ollie World, I could barely tell you what was actually going on in this skating odyssey narrative, but again, the soundtrack has steadily worked its way onto my Spotify. The gameplay has welcomed me in with its simplicity, but has grown deeper and deeper the further I've skated, and its overall tone is just super welcoming. I think many people miss out on this one because it's the embodiment of a quick session pick up and play game, but it deserves so much more than that in 2022. Rollerdrome was a sneaky game of the year contender for me, and it really should be one of yours too. This third-person rollerblading shoot 'em up is the second appearance of Roll 7 in this list after Ollie Ollie World, who crafted an immensely addictive skill-based experience that blends Tony Hawk with the path of Neo. It can feel a little bit overwhelming to start as you're having to deal with the expansive list of rollerblading tricks and flips along with the different weapons and increasingly difficult and plentiful enemies. But once Rollerdrome clicks with you, Tony Hawk, he can get in the bin because there's a new skating overlord in town and this one's got guns. Look, I know he has a skateboard, you're on rollerblades, but that's the analogy I'm going for. You'll be pulling off the sickest of tricks and trying to boost that score by timing your shots precisely to extend your combo, and it quickly becomes a case of memorizing and mastering each park and their hordes of enemies. This one gripped me, especially once you start getting into those higher difficulties. The fact that Roll7 released this and the Ollie Ollie world just 6 months apart, it has to be commended. And we are topping off this list with a healthy dosage of personal bias. Rainbow Six Extraction, in my mind, received an unfair rap. A lot of people just look at this PvE take on Rainbow Six Siege and label it a reskin, but I'm here to tell you that that isn't actually the case. Rainbow Six Extraction is a fantastic tactical co-op experience, and one of my most memorable experiences in 2022. With Alien Arcane spread across the world, it is up to the Extraction Task Force to carry out a variety of mission types in groups of 3. With operators carrying over from Siege, you now have levels to work through for these operators. But this isn't some endless experience. Extraction does a nice balancing act of not being too big, but being big enough that you need to put a graft in. Throw in some super slow paced stealth action and the carryover of health from match to match, and you'll quickly become quite invested in your progression in this game, especially when you start to get to the higher level affairs. Now I know it's not for everyone, but as a fan of first person shooters and as a fan of team based tactical experiences, Rainbow Six Extraction was a fantastic start to the year that was just sort of overlooked. So those are my picks for the top 10 most underrated games of 2022. Let me know down in the comments how much you disagree with me or which games you think should have made the cut. As always, thank you for watching, and remember to like the video if you enjoyed the video, and if you'd like to see more video content all within the world of PlayStation, then stick with us here on Push Square. I'll see you in the next one.